Well, it's been some time since I put content on this channel, isn't it? Blimey. Well, happy New Year, happy Easter, commiserations and congratulations. I think that covers the last 3 years, doesn't it? Right, completely different video than what I've done before. Today we're going to look at this. It's a Game Boy Pocket. I've just bought it from Japan. It's classified as junk, so I'm going to repair it. Now there's a number of things I can see straight away that have broken on here. You can see the screen is burnt. That's easy to fix. And also in the back, I've taken some pictures of this already, but in the back you can see that there's some corrosion. Come on, damn you, focus. There's some corrosion on the battery terminals, and I've got a feeling that's what's stopping it working. There's usually another fault with the power switch here, but I don't know if it's working yet. So let's just prove that it's not working. Put some AAA's batteries into it, and let's try and fire it up. And no, nothing. There's a red light that should pop on there, and it will run. The other thing as well as I've noticed is I think there's something wrong with the buttons here as well. The membrane underneath looks like it might be damaged as well. So we're going to have a go at repairing this. Now there's no reason to repair this because, let's face it, it's an old game console, and it's not that usable anymore. But to be honest with you, game consoles are having a bit of a resurgence at the moment. It's all very retro. Now if you're not familiar with this, this is a Game Boy Pocket and this is an original Game Boy, and you can see the size difference already there between the two. So anyway, so the first thing we should do really is open it up. I'm going to use a bottle cap to keep all my screws together. Wrong tip. So this is what we're dealing with, and I can see already we've got some corrosion down here. There's corrosion all across the battery terminals here. Just looks like extra flux there. So I don't know, maybe there's been some liquid damage going on here. Like so. And that releases the main board. We can take that off and have a look inside. Right, what story is this telling us this side? Right, well, the contacts for all the buttons here are absolutely filthy. They're absolutely disgusting. Take the buttons out. Now the screen itself is glued into the case. But there's a really quick way of getting this out, and that is to literally twist like so until you start hearing a crack, and then with a spudger underneath just pull it gently away, and that's it. And then we'll heat this up, get the lens off because we can replace that lens, get that off, and then we can give that front case a clean. So I'll do that in a minute. Let's have a look how badly damaged this screen is. See, there's a lump there. I don't know if you can see it. I'll rotate it. There's a lump there. It looks like the polarizer's come away. But that's an easy fix to do as well. This brown bit here is the front polarizer. But I don't know if that's damaged the back polarizer. There's a reflector at the back and another polarizer behind the glass. And I don't know if that's damaged as well. We'll know that when we take the front one off, so we'll do that in a minute as well. But first of all, let's see if we can get the ready thing working. So the first thing we want to do is we want to prove that we can get some power on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to just solder on a battery box onto the board, just to prove that we can get some power straight onto it. What this will prove is that it is just a corrosion issue on the board, or we can at least eliminate that from our inquiries on getting this thing fired up. Right, that's on. So we've got battery terminal on there like so. Let's put some batteries in here. and then Okay, still nothing. Just make sure I did get those around the right way. I did. Okay, so the next thing, another common fault with these things is, let's find my cotton buds. Where have I put them? So the next thing to do is to look at the switch, clean the switch up. Another common thing, and what we're using here, we're using some isopropyl alcohol, and what we're going to do is we're going to soak the switch and get as much isopropyl alcohol, some bathful in there as we possibly can. Wiggle it backwards and forwards, and all we're looking for is an LED to light up. Nothing. Ooh, interesting. We've got absolutely no life whatsoever. So let's just clean that up a bit more before we start then looking a little bit more seriously at what could be wrong here. So let's first of all, let's just prove that we've got some voltage going in. Let's just make sure we haven't got a flat battery. And we've got ourselves 2.5 volts. Well, that's alright, that's good enough. I will change the batteries actually, just because we can eliminate that from our inquiries. 2.65 volts, one side of the switch, 2.65 volts, and the other side of the switch, 5.2 millivolts. Right, let's turn the switch off. 2.6 volts. Nothing. $200 and something other odd millivolts there. Okay, let's switch it on. Right, I've had a bit of a dig round. What I've done, by the way, is I've just connected the negative probe to a croc clip and connected to the board. So I've just got one probe that I need to prod around with. And I can't see any proof of this switch switching on and off. It looks like I've got voltage coming in there, but I've got no proof of anything going on or going off there. Right, to get this off the board, what we're going to be using is we're going to be using our old favourite friend, the solder wick, and a nice clean solder tip. Dippity. Last bit to do, just that one there. So if I wedge that underneath there, just to apply some mechanical force, and then heat from this side, might be able to lift. There we go. Good. Right, the saga of the switch. What I've done is I've taken it apart. What I ended up doing was I took the metal cover off, and then the inside popped out and came away. And in fact, let me do it again. I'll show you what I did. Just very gently, just unclip the side. Now, I don't think you can see that, but let's see if we can focus here. So you can see, you unclip the side and then it all comes apart. And it comes into 3 pieces. You get the metal cover, you get the actual switch itself, and you get the housing. So what I've done is I've cleaned up the contacts in here, and you can see there's 2 sets of contacts there. And I've cleaned those up, and that's helped no end. But the problem I found was in the switch itself. Let's see if this cleans up. Come on then. In the switch itself, those terminals were actually broken. They were bent over and crossed over, so they weren't making contact. So what I've done is I've straightened those up using the tweezers very gently, and then I've rubbed them with I've cleaned them with alcohol as well. So then all it was just a case of refitting it back together. So if you need to do this yourself, the switch only obviously goes in one way, and if you look at the metal surround, come on, focus. There you go. You can see it's got like a castling effect on one side. Those uneven edges go switch side up so that the smooth edge faces the contacts. I know that makes no sense at all to anybody, but if you're taking it apart and having to do this yourself, it'll make absolute sense. And then it's a case of very gently squeezing it all together until you get the switch back in one piece again. Right, this is some hours later. In fact, this is the very next day that I'm fiddling around with this Game Boy Pocket. And although we were looking at the switch and fiddling around the switch yesterday, that was indeed broken, and I fixed that. That's not a problem. However, nothing was working. So I started probing around the rest of the board and discovered that the DC module, which is this piece here, which fits in on the board just here, that was not giving out the required voltages. Now there's two things that happen here. First of all, you get 3 volts into the DC voltage converter on this side. Move that out of the way. So you put 3 volts in here, which was being switched on by the switch, so I could prove that, and that was working okay. And then out the other side we should be getting 5 volts and 19 volts, or negative 19 volts. And they were not working, any of those. So what I decided to do was take it out and measure it away from the actual Game Boy. So what I did is I soldered on the 3 volt pack onto that side, and I tested it in isolation outside of the Game Boy, and indeed this was working. So I had ground continuity across the grounds, I had 5 volts on the middle pin, and I had 19 volts on the other pin. So focus there and you can see. So that's working. So I've put it back in and tested it again, and it was just giving out 1 volt across all of it, and I couldn't work out what it was doing. It just wasn't working correctly. So I've measured around, and it looks as if there is actually a short on the board. But further investigation, because as I was probing around and testing, I thought that it was this diode here which had failed, but it doesn't seem to be, because that is being used as a fuse from what I've read online. And I tested the main fuse there as well. That's a fuse on the board there. That's working okay. That seems to be a dead short no matter which way round you go on the diode, but apparently that seems to be okay. So I was testing around the other diode there, and then I was checking for dead shorts across these caps. And you may notice, eagle-eyed viewers and those who know, they notice there's a cap missing here. And the reason I've taken that out is, I don't know if you can see it, but as I was cleaning the board, because I'll come back to that in a minute, but once I was cleaning the board, I noticed there was a heck of a lot of corrosion around here. And indeed that would be true, because it looked like the batteries had corroded in place, and that there is full of corrosion. And it may be that this track here, from this capacitor to here, actually doesn't connect anymore because there's so much corrosion. So what I've done is I've lifted that capacitor off. I used the hot air gun to lift that cap off, and what I'm doing is I'm just testing it, and in fact there was no continuity between this pad and over here at all. So I've started to clean it up, and I'm going to use some flux on this in a minute to just see if I can actually get some clean metal on the board here, because it did look as if there was no metal, there's no track there at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean that up, clean the pads up, and then I'm going to put the cap, which is that one there, I'll put this cap back on there and see how we get on. Yep, I think that is the end of that. There is a lot of corrosion on the board here. So I'm at the crossroads here. What do? Do I keep going along with this, or is this board now more used to me as spare parts? Because the contacts can be cleaned up. That would be very useful. I could have a spare speaker. I could have a spare switch at the top, which I know is now working good. I've got spares here of other things on the board. So do I strip this down and use this as a spares board? You know, all this furniture here on the board as well, and just use it as a spares, knowing full well that, oh look, I mean, I think that's even corrosion there as well. I don't know. I mean, the case is good. The lens was knackered. The case was good, and I'm pretty sure I can resurrect that screen as well, because I think that is just the front polarizer that's gone. But I won't be able to prove that until I plug it in and see if we've got any lines on it. But that could be good. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip this one down and relegate it to the parts bin. So this isn't the video I wanted it to be fair. I wanted this one to be quite a good refurb and show how it's so easy to do. And I think I've got a working DC job here as well. So I think sadly that's the end of that. Let's just get the clock. Time of death 12:31.